Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you. Sweet dreams that leave all worries behind you. But in your dreams, whatever they be, dream a little dream of me.
Good morning. You are listening to KSQD Santa Cruz, K-Squid 90.7 FM, streaming live at ksqd.org. I am Katherine Bell, and this is the Dream Journal, a weekly show where we explore the healing powers of your nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with you. In the words of Carl Jung, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Today's beautiful music in the background here is Gentrification, created fresh for you again today. That's Gentrification by Rick Kleffel. Today we're going to turn the mic around, and I will be answering the questions rather than asking them. My interviewer will be my comrade here in the radio trenches, Rick Kleffel, man of many hats. So if you have questions for me today, this is the day to ask them. We'll be taking call-ins in the last segment of the show. This is Katherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. The Dream Journal is also a podcast, so you can look for that on all of your regular podcast places, and also on the KSQD website. That's ksqd.org/the-dream-journal. Look for the Dream Journal wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe and tell your friends. It was a great way to start a conversation about dreams. And what else would you rather be talking about? So, speaking of dreams, I'm going to start with my own personal dream work. So, I've been mulling over what the dream ego, they call the perspective of the dream ego, like the me and the dream, which is really only a part of who I am, but it's a part that I'm most familiar with. Why, that they say that the dream ego is the least trustworthy source, a perspective in the dream. And so I had a recent dream where I was in a hurry. Haha, I've never been in a hurry before. No, you all know this is a very familiar theme for me, rushing and hurrying. And I think it's common for lots of people. And in the dream, there's a teenage boy who is not interested in hurrying. He's just has no interest in really even helping my situation. And I get very upset with him and get frustrated. But so then I'm thinking that as a dream ego, that I have this habit of rushing and hurrying. And it's so true from waking life. This is just a habit for me, and it does not enhance my experience of life. And this other part of the dream, the teenage boy part of me, is not feeling rushed, not in a hurry. And so in some ways, this is like maybe the shadow part of me, or the part of me that knows how to take their time. And so as I bring these two parts together, the part that always feels in a hurry, that's like there's some trauma there. There's some way that I feel like I need to rush, that I can't take my time. So there's some kind of trauma there that I'm reacting to. And yet there's other character in the dream is calm and not hurried. And so I'm realizing that often the other characters in the dream really hold some valuable information for me, the dreamer. So this is what I've been mulling over these days, in the last week or so. So we are taking call-ins during the last 20 minutes of the show, and you can email us at any time at onair@ksqd.org. Rick Kleffel, that man of many hats, is sitting here is engineering today as well as interviewing me, and he'll be monitoring the emails occasionally, checking to look to see if he got any emails. onair@ksqd.org. So in fact, I'm going to interview Rick today, and then he's going to turn around and introduce me and interview me. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce my interviewer today, none other than the mighty Rick Kleffel, who has been working behind the scenes here for the Journal, both as magical music maestro and as show engineer. Unbeknownst to most of you, Rick is himself also a proficient journalist who has conducted hundreds of interviews with notable authors over the last 20 years. And he is the host of the KSQD radio show Narrative Species, which you can also find on the Squid Fridays at 5 o'clock. His music is also, he also has a music show, which is on Sundays at 9 o'clock. So check those things out at ksqd.org. So Rick, thanks for sitting in my seat today.
My pleasure, Catherine. Now it's time to introduce you. Catherine Bell has worked with dreamers and dream groups for 25 years and has presented in venues ranging from local to international. She works with the International Association for the Study of Dreams, where she is on the board of directors and ethics committee. She is the conference planning co-chair. Katherine is working on a book about dreams. She came to Santa Cruz as an astrophysicist in 1985 and earned a PhD, after which she worked for NASA in Mountain View for 11 years. You can find her at experientialdreamwork.com. Thank you for joining me, Katherine.
All right. Thank you, Rick.
Katherine, you write in your bio that you came here in 1985, but I think that where you came from originally and your family and your early life were really influential on what you do now, what you've done, and what you've become.
Right.
I'd like you to talk about, growing up in your, I think, probably safe to say, unusual family.
Well, my family is a family of scientists. I have 3 siblings, and all 4 of us and my 2 parents are all scientists of one kind or another, basically all in the hard sciences. We have physicists, chemists, and then we have like a lot of hard science. And so for me, it seemed totally natural that I would become a scientist as well, because that's just what we do as a Bell. In the Bell family, we are scientists. And, my mom was a science teacher. And so she would bring home games for us to play with that, like name the elements and the game of evolution. And so I got pretty good at science because I had a lot of practice. And so I was good at science. And so I thought, well, I think I should study science. And another factor was that my dad, who actually studied photovoltaics, he was a researcher in photovoltaics in the 70s and 80s when it was just getting started. And he loved his job, and he inspired me. I wanted a job that I loved too. So I thought I should be a scientist like my dad. But it turns out I'm not like my dad. I am in some ways, and I do love my dad. But there are ways that I didn't find science very satisfying. I was successful at it. I had, bachelor's, master's, PhD, worked at NASA as a civil servant for 11 years, and I was quite competent at it, but I didn't find it satisfying.
I think that at starting your early life as a scientist, and I think that's safe to say that at 12 you were, if they were still around, you were probably the kind of girl who had chemistry sets.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if they were. But that really inculcates you in a life of looking at the world as facts and looking at what is actually there that you can touch and measure and verify and write down. Dreams are none of those things, but they are also undeniably exist. So I'd like you to talk about being part of a family and just looking at the world through a factual, really heavy-duty factual lens, because it's clear that even now you look at everything is this real? Is it not real? What do I know about this, and why do I know? Talk about that, the influx, the connection between what you know and why and how you know it, and how, think about, as a kid growing up, believing in Santa Claus or believing in UFOs or whatever you believed in.
Well, in my family, there was always a little bit of a wink and a nod around Santa Claus. It was a story. It was magic, but there was a little bit of like, okay. And then I think there was a certain Christmas when their suggestion was, mom or dad suggested, well, you should leave out a little bit of alcohol for Santa Claus. And I'm going like, oh, wait a minute. I got it. Okay. Because I still consider myself a scientist. I am, even though I study dreams, what I do is I study some of the things that were not spoken of, that, in the family, feelings were not really spoken of. There were a lot of undercover feelings that were not fit topics. And it was always very tender for me to actually talk about my feelings. It's kind of been radical. It's kind of breaking the family mode, and that there was a lot of stress around certain holidays because there was, my mom was in a family situation which was abusive, and so for her, a lot of family situations would bring up a lot of very strong feelings of pain and helplessness, of course, but she didn't know what to do with that, because in her family, of course, those things were not welcome. So, I feel like she did a remarkable job of raising us, and we were never abused, for which I give my mom great credit, because abusers often abuse their own children because that's what they know and they can't help it. They have the trauma and they don't know what to do, and so I really give my mom credit for that. But there was like, when emotions got big, there would be like running away. Mom would be upstairs and hiding, and so I got the message early that big emotions were not safe and they should be hidden, and feelings were not to be talked about. And so the fact that the main focus of my dream work now is about emotions is kind of radical. And so the emotions are there, but they weren't always spoken about. In fact, they were often not spoken about. And I have found it to be really transformative to start to make friends with my emotions and to really be curious about them and to ask other people as well about their emotions. And I've seen how transformative that can be and how wonderful that it can be to start to connect with those sensations from the body.
What you're talking about is really interesting to me, because every human being on Earth knows what emotions are, knows that they are real because we feel them there. Yet, not a single human being on Earth can put their finger on an emotion. They can't hold an emotionometer up to it and measure it, either its type or, its strength. So talk about the idea of recognizing your emotions as real. As you began to do that when you were just, even as a teenager, because that's when your emotions are raging, you're completely insane. And that teenagehood may last from like the age of 12 to the age of 35.
That's what it did for me. Yes.
That sounds about right. So talk about recognizing the reality of emotions and trying to square that circle that, they're real, but you can't touch them, you can't measure them. All you can say is what you feel about them, and then you're looking at emotions through emotion.
Well, it can be extremely helpful to reduce, I hate to say reduce, it sounds like you're minimizing, but it can be extremely helpful to pay attention to physical sensations in your body, and to, instead of saying I'm angry, to notice my jaw is tensed and my fists are clenched, and to feel my heart rate is stronger than it should be, and that it's rather than giving it a label, it can be very helpful to think of the actual physical sensations that are going on. I read a book about a year ago called How Emotions Are Made, which totally flipped around my view of what emotions are. And this is Lisa Feldman Barrett, and it's highly recommended for anybody in the emotion fields who's interested in emotions. And she talks about the idea that emotions are actually constructed, and that we don't have a happiness circuit or a sadness circuit, and it's not we've been triggered so that the anger circuit has been activated. And then take fear, for example. There's many ways many constellations of physical sensations that we all label the same thing, that we label fear. Like there can be running down an alley, that's fear. There can be frozen in shock, that could also be fear. There can be just like very carefully looking around, like you're walking down the alley with your eyes wide, and that also is fear. And yet the heart rate may be totally different, the muscle tone totally different, and the brain activity is different in each of these situations, and yet we label them all fear. And so that's why I find it so helpful to come back to the body and really pay attention to those sensations and try to avoid even labeling the emotion. I actually prefer a question rather than what do you feel. I prefer saying what do you feel like? And that opens up the range to bring it in the body sensations. That brings in, yes, this is just like what happened, when I got the wrong change at the grocery store. You can bring in situations which it is like, or this is like when that dream when I was being chased by a bear. So the saying, what do I feel like, has been really, really helpful for me because those labels are actually very high level functions, and Lisa Feldman Barrett has lots of examples of how they're culturally defined, and certain cultures have different sets of emotions that they value, and so so to get back to the basics of it, it's really about the physical sensation and the activation in the body. That's how I've started looking at it.
That when you were talking about the feeling in your body having an equivalent to a feeling in your brain, that brought to mind a book I recently ran an interview a couple weeks ago with a fellow named Bessel van der Kolk.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
And his book is called The Body Keeps the Score.
Mm-hmm. It's a fabulous book. I know that one. That's a good one. Yes.
Yeah. So, and that made me think, the idea being that when you have a traumatic event in your life, those memories are stored somewhere in your body, literally in your flesh and blood, and you can excavate them and get rid of them. Their malign influence on you. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly kind of a version of what you're saying.
Absolutely. And one of the things that disappointed me about that book is he does not address what I think is one of the most powerful ways of dealing with these stored traumas in our body, which is our dreams.
He does not address that.
He does not address dreams. And yet
No.
the dreams are very precisely addressing the issues that are stored in our body. So that's why, a nightmare may not replay a particular traumatic incident exactly, or it may even just be very different, and yet it calls up that traumatic incident, because what it's addressing is the body, not the memories. And so that's how I see that the dreams, that when we're dreaming, the part of our brain that's active is the very deep part that's kind of the more primitive part, the limbic system, the hypothalamus, the amygdala, and all that. And so that's way more primitive than the prefrontal cortex, which is where we're doing all of our thinking and where our more normal episodic memories are stored is in the prefrontal cortex, as I understand it. See, I'm still a scientist. I love this stuff because it's something that it just makes sense to me. So the dreams, what I'm saying though, is that the dreams are activating in our bodies and in our brains, which is a part of the body, at a more primitive level. And so it can be helpful to pay attention to our dreams to find out what is going on in our bodies, and to see what releases are starting to happen. I think the dreams show the cracks of where we're starting to change, the way that our psyche is shifting. We're always changing, and the dreams are showing where the epicenter of that change is happening.
The other book that profoundly influenced me many, many years ago was Slapstick by Kurt Vonnegut. He described human beings as walking chemical experiments. Oh. And I think that's an absolute, we know that to be true on one hand, but also when you were talking about dreams, it struck me that dreams themselves occur when our body is in a different chemical state. When we're resting, there's a completely different set of chemicals running through our body and running through our brain.
Yes, absolutely.
So talk about, one of the things that really interested me about you is that you worked as an astrophysicist at NASA. what the hell does an astrophysicist do at NASA? I mean, that's, it's kind of a hard job to wrap your brain around.
Well, it is very much a brain-oriented job. And it was, there are many different things that astrophysicists do at NASA. There's also astronomers who are more on the observational side, but I use the term astrophysics to indicate it was more theoretical. And what I did is I ran numerical calculations of the formation of stars and planets using partial differential equations, and to kind of understand the environment from which the stars and planets formed. And that was my specialty there. And I would then work with astronomers who actually were doing observations and try to, both of other solar systems and also of asteroids and particles in our own solar system, to try to understand the history of life, pre-life.
You are listening to the Dream Journal with Katherine Bell. She is our host and also the subject of our interview today. My name is Rick Kleffel. I'm generally behind the scenes. I'm coming out from behind the page here. We are going to go to the second segment in our show after a few brief announcements.
And it's an old song, and the words are all the same, and you can sing along. In laughter, joy, or pain, 'cause this is life, it's life, and it's what we're living for, and it's more than just your 2 feet that have to move. 'Cause this is life, it's life, why hold out for more? If you're living, then you got nothing left to prove.
Welcome back to the Dream Journal with Katherine Bell. She's our host, but also our guest today. Katherine, one of the things about dreams is we know they exist. We know there's a science associated with them. There's some brain science with, we have a whole new realm of understanding the neurosciences have just taken a huge leap in the last 20 years. It's really been amazing. So talk about studying dreams as a science, and what was the point when you're, busy calculating differential equations that most of us would look over and look at it and be struck with terror. I have a terror reaction when confronted with the differential equation. I think many people do. So talk about going from data to dreams.
Well, I did enjoy the differential equations. I found them to be I found that they were kind of soothing. Like I do Sudoku puzzles now. That's kind of my current version of the partial differential equations. And there's something about numbers that is very soothing. And yet it's kind of, because of that very soothingness, there's something that perhaps is kind of a numbing, and that is a very useful thing. That is one of the things about people's defense mechanism, including my own, including, everyone that I grew up with, my family of origin, that it is extremely useful to have a way to hide, to take a break from our emotions. We don't need to feel everything all the time. We couldn't possibly function as human beings if we were feeling everything all the time. And so I think it's very useful to have these self-soothing mechanisms. But I found that working for NASA got to be something that was, shall I say, boring? I couldn't get inspired. I had a hard time getting excited about the next the next round of equations. I like the conferences. I like going to lunch with my colleagues. That was some of my favorite stuff. And my supervisors suggested that I become one of them. So I was actually the assistant branch chief for my last few years at NASA and worked in supervising. And it turns out, oddly enough, that I liked working with people. I did not suspect this about myself, that, people.
I suppose so, sure.
Yeah, who knew? Who knew that, people were wonderful to work with, and, those meetings could drag on sometimes, but it felt like I was being helpful, I was being useful. I could see what people's needs. You'd hear about stories, what's going on in their life, and they need a little extra time for something or whatever it was, and it kind of a light bulb went off for me. It's like, oh, people, this is good. And so when I was pregnant and had a baby in 2004. And my husband at the time says, well, why don't you quit? You're not very happy there at NASA. So, he had the money to cover me. And so I quit, and that literally led me down a whole nother path, which has resulted in me coming around to paying attention to dreams. It took a while. It took a few more years. Well, still an ongoing process for me to start to connect more deeply with myself. And I had to go through the experience of ignoring myself so deeply that I actually was able to ignore these pains in my gut. This is in 2005. I was able to ignore these pains in my gut for several days until my appendix actually ruptured, and I almost died. And so I learned that the consequences of ignoring the sensations from my body could cost me my life. And that was a huge wake-up call when I woke up in the hospital up in Hood River, Oregon, and I was alone because my family had gone home because we were there on vacation. The rental had ended, and I was alone. And I was like, wow, I almost died. So this is like serious business here. I can't ignore this any longer. And so that was like a big wake-up call for me. And my dreams had always been there. I'd actually been in a dream group at that point already for years. And I really loved the dream group, but there was something that really shifted for me after the near-death experience, where I realized that dreams were kind of throwing me a lifeline, and that I didn't know where to start. But if I could just start with tonight's dream and say, I don't know what it means, but I'm just going to write it down and say and know that it's helping me in some way. I have this idea that dreams are like part of the emotional immune system, and that they help us get back to balance, and they help us recover our state of mind. And so if we enhance our dreams, then we're enhancing our immune system, our emotional immune system. So I just started trusting that the dream was there for some reason, some ancient system. Dreams have been around for at least 200 million years, since the dawn of mammals. And so there's something vital about this process, that it hasn't been edited out of humanity, that all humans dream, all mammals seem to dream. So there's something important here. There's some kind of major housekeeping that's going on during dreaming. But I don't believe that we need to really understand the dream in order to enhance the dream.
I want to ask you, what made you join a dream group in the first place?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a slightly unusual activity.
Maybe so, but if I have anything to say about it, it'll become more common.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, so I have always been interested in my dreams to some degree. I have several childhood dreams that were very striking for me, and I still mull them over from time to time. And there's been like a curiosity, and I was recovering from the death of a loved one in the early 90s here in Santa Cruz, and I was seeing a psychologist, and sometimes we would talk about dreams, and I was like, oh wow, it always kind of lit me up when I would bring a dream to the session. And this is a little nudge for you psychologists out there, is that they've actually done studies that if dreams come up in a session, that the clients are more satisfied with the session without having to have any big interpretation. Just to bring the dream in is satisfying. But then the big trigger is that I took a workshop with the recently deceased Jeremy Taylor over at the old Unity Church on Broadway, and we had a big circle of like 20 people, and we talked about one person's dream, and it just was like, this is amazing. I can do this. I can do a group like this. Jeremy Taylor has books, Where People Fly and Water Runs Up Hills, one that got me through the door, that describe how to host your own dream group, and how to respectfully work with other people's dreams, especially explore them. And I decided to start my own group. And so I think it was the early 90s, I had started this group, and we met were some change in personnel, but then it settled down, and there was 5 of us who, for 12 years, we met almost every week and talked about our dreams. And I found it was this great community feeling to see these people every week. And it also seems like it was doing something to my mind and my soul, that there was something that was very healing about it. So I've always been, this is kind of the steps that woke up in me, the idea of the dream group. And you can set up your own dream group. They are wonderful.
When and why did you start writing down your dreams? And how did you do it at first? And has that changed over the years?
Oh yeah. Well, I've actually have about 3 feet of hardcover, hard paper dream journals on my shelf at home, and some of the early ones there's just like little scribbles and 3 or 4 words and little sketches, and then later it gets more detailed with like colored diagrams but now I do it on my devices. I'm a modern woman, and I do the voice to dictation whenever I can, and it's just write them down, record them in the morning. Always remember to write your feelings down, because sometimes the feeling in the dream is not what you would expect. And I don't do the sketches so much anymore, though I sometimes, in my mind, I'm often bringing in the image, the visuals. The visuals are a very important part of the dream. I think of a dream as a visual and a feeling. So there's like an image, some kind of an image and some kind of a feeling, and that together makes up the dream.
When you changed from writing things down with your hand on paper or typing them in with the typewriter or even typing them into a computer to dictation into a device, that's a huge change to me. The physical act of having to move your hands when you write and think about what your fingers are doing, or try to make sure your handwriting's legible. Mine is not.
Right, that is an issue.
Talk about how did that change both the output, the actual words that you recorded and what you recorded, and did that change too your feelings about the output and your feelings about the dreams? Because I find that when I'm doing things, if I actually physically take notes, whether it's typing them into a typewriter on an electronic sticky in a book, or writing them actually onto a yellow sticky to be put into a physical book, that makes a fundamental difference in the way I experience the book as I read and after.
I hear people talking about that. I didn't find it to be a huge difference for myself. That I know people talk a lot about that, and there maybe there is a benefit, especially in the beginning when you're learning to connect to who you are, to the physical sensations, learning to wake up your own interoception, your own internal feelings. That doing the more physical thing can be helpful. But I at this moment, now 30 years after writing down all my dreams, all the dreams I can remember. Of course, we don't remember most of the dreams that we do have. So where I'm at now, I don't find it to be a huge difference, and it can be a comfort to just speak into the dictation. The one thing that's changed is that I've gotten married, and so I've since the fall, and I now have a partner there all the time. My husband is there, and I get a little self-conscious speaking my dreams out loud. So I've kind of gone back to typing them in on my iPad, because it's hard for me to focus in on my own feelings while I know somebody else can hear what I'm saying.
Oh no, that's perfectly valid. When you write your dreams down, or dreams, they have a certain narrative, I guess. But I think the dream narrative is way, way different from the narrative that, like a book narrative or a diary. Could you talk about your experience of the dream narrative map? And when I tell a story, it maps to a specific series of events that are fairly comprehensible. A dream has no need for that, and often doesn't. It goes all over the place. So talk about the difference in dreams narratives versus the narrative, a diary, say, narrative?
Right. Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head about the difference between dreams and waking life is that the dreams can be very chaotic, and I believe that the dreams are not only, that they're stranger than we can know. That I think there's something.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that that's why there is a definite difference between a dream report and the dream itself, and that the dream report is just the best that we can capture of what actually happened, because like I was saying earlier, the dream actually occurs in a part of the brain that's kind of pre-verbal, so there may not even be a lot of words associated with the dream while it's happening, but once we wake up and that prefrontal cortex gets involved, then I'm like laying there going, I'm trying to like distill it into words, and sometimes it's like putting it through a salt shaker, or even worse, through a meat grinder or something, that there's some way that I know that I'm mangling what actually happened, and yet I still trust that whatever gets through is going to be helpful. Because what I find is that when I read back on one of my dream reports, it kind of pulls on some neural net or something. It kind of pulls on me in a certain way that feels true. So I know that I'm getting enough of the dream to make it useful to my waking consciousness. But we are definitely putting it through a filter, because dreams are just so confusing. And the order, I'm often like, I'll wake up and there's like 3 scenes in my mind. I have no idea which one came first. And you have to be careful, because I'll start writing one scene and the other 2 start slipping away. So I have to like say, well, which is the one that's the most important? I'll just start with that one. So yeah, it's chaotic.
Well, one of the things too, in dreams, in real life, only one thing can happen at one time. In dreams, they are when you write something, you call it a chronicle, right?
Right.
Dreams are achronic. They don't have necessarily a timestamp and a forward thing like a videotape.
Right.
I mean, it's everything going into one big mix master at once. You may be experiencing 2 different times and 2 different emotions at the same time in the dream.
Yep, that's totally can happen. Yep.
Now, you've left NASA, and you're getting ready to, you're out there. You're interested in dreams. Right after the break, we'll have you come back and tell us how what things you did to set up experiential dream work and get yourself involved in the bigger world of dreams, the IASD and all the rest of that.
Right.
But first, we're going to hear your next song.
And phones are open?
The phones are open, folks. Catherine,
yes.
It's an AMA. Ask her, AHA, ask her anything. And you can call at
831-900-5773. Tony Rusomano standing by to take your call.
Train wheels running through the back of my memory. Then I ran on a hilltop following a pack of wild geese. But someday everything's gonna sound like a rhapsody when I paint my masterpiece.
Welcome back to the Dream Journal. I'm your interviewer of the host today. My name's Rick Kleffel, and our guest is Katherine Bell. Katherine, talk about going from chronicling your dreams. You're a scientist now. All of a sudden, you found your center of attention on something that you can't prove exists, you can't measure, you can't record directly. So talk about what's happening to you in your mind and in your emotions, too, as you transition from somebody who studies astrophysics and solves differential equations to somebody who talks to human beings and helps them understand their dreams and how their dreams can help them.
Yeah. So I also want to throw out the number again, 831-900-5773, in case you want to call in. And I would say that why not be your own scientist? Why not be your own detective? So you can detect what's going on with yourself and study your dreams. That's what I do, is like as I write down my dreams, I find it's very helpful to notice the patterns, like the dream I talked about this morning of being in a hurry. Gosh, I know that one. That is such a theme for me. And yet it's not always the same. And that I have found that there is this pattern, and yet it's different each time. I'm in a different situation. I'm running for a train, or I'm running for a plane, or I'm alone, or somebody's with me. And noticing these differences can be really helpful in seeing these subtle changes, and it becomes an evolution. I start to notice the way that I changed. Like one thing I didn't say about this particular dream I had this last week, which is that there actually was a resolution, and that is so rare in my hurrying dreams of there being any kind of resolution. But in this one, I found a figurine, like a little statuette that I recognized from my teen years. Remember, there's a teen in this dream. So there's some connection to myself in my teen years. And I find this, and I kind of melt, and I go in this moment of, oh, wow, I remember this statue. And I arrange it on the desk with these other figurines. It's a bunny. And so I put it with these other bunnies. And there's something that kind of melts into me. And I find a way basically to connect with my inner teen. And so I don't feel so rushed anymore. And that's all that I remember of the dream. But there is like sometimes there's a resolution to these dreams. So we think, oh, I have the same dream over and over again. If you really look closely at it, I think you'll be surprised to notice that changes are happening, and that can give you some hope. It can give you some relief from the sense that, oh God, that dream again, And so really, I encourage you to be a scientist and to really study your own dreams and notice the patterns, notice the motifs. And this is one thing I do with my dreamers. People come to me and we do private sessions or come to my groups, is that we notice the patterns, of each other's in the groups, and I can like highlight. It's like, wow, look at this moment here where you came to a resolution, and a lot of times the dreamer doesn't even notice that. And so that's where the benefit of a group or a coach can come in, is that you get somebody outside of you who has this perspective to say, oh yeah, we have seen dreams like this before, but here's how it's different, and that can be very, very helpful. To get that outside perspective. You
are now a member. You're high up in the IASD.
How did that happen?
Well, that is my question. Yeah. So how did you go from somebody who was writing down their dreams to somebody who was holding dream groups to somebody who, became essentially a scientist of dreams? Right.
Well, I've...
what was the order? Did you start the group first?
I was in the group first, and I was the one who had organized it, but we wasn't specifically a leader. In retrospect, I was kind of always the one on the phone, making sure that we got together, and so kind of acknowledging my own leadership was a big part of coming into my own and starting to become a professional, and by noticing that I was a professional, I also started having dreams about having sessions with folks. And so I kind of followed my dreams in that way by noticing that I was working with other folks around their dreams in my dreams. And it kind of was like, well, okay, I guess that's what we're going to do here. And it was so exciting. And I didn't think I had the skills for it, but I found I learned as I went, and it's been very valuable.
We have a caller on line 1 or 2.
It's one.
One? Okay.
Yep. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Katherine. How are you?
Chris from Pelton, my dear friend Chris, who was in my original, if you don't mind me saying, Chris. That I've known you for a long
original dream group.
From the original dream group, exactly. So Chris is one of my original dreamies back from the 90s, the early 90s.
And I must say, it's really great to hear you tell your story on the radio today. And it's been one of the pleasures of my life to watch you grow into what you're doing now with your dream work. And my question is, what's your vision for the future? I know you're writing the book, and I would just love to hear you affirm where you see all that's leading in your life and your work with dreams.
Oh, wow. Well, I could be a rock star. That's what I'm The dreamer.
I encourage it.
Yeah, I actually about 3 or 4 years ago, long before the Dream Journal, shortly before the Dream Journal, I considered going back to graduate school and getting a master's degree, some kind of clinical degree. And I looked at it, and it was going to be really expensive and really long. And I decided that, and they teach me all these other things that I really didn't care about. For me, it's all about the dreams. I'm not really interested in all the other kinds of psychology that I would learn in such a master's degree. So I just started educating myself. And so this radio show has been a tremendous education for myself. And so if there's somebody I want to learn from, I invite them on the show and I ask them all my questions. And now the book, I'm thinking of the book as this is my thesis. And so I am creating my own education as I go. That this is really bringing together, and as I'm writing, I'm finding that the ideas I'm really coming to the surface. And as I express my ideas as I'm writing, it really I feel like I'm educating myself, and I'd like the book to change the way people think about dreams, and to really respect and be curious about their own dreams. And I would love to be someone who inspired a dream renaissance and be interviewed on NPR and that sort of thing, and inspire people to pay attention to this amazing thing that happens every night. And who knows? Maybe take the Dream Journal show national. Who knows? Because I really love this radio show. But just getting things down in the book has been super, super satisfying. And the thing about the dreams and following the dreams is that you don't always know what's going to happen next. So I feel like I've taken a couple big leaps and imagining the future and seeing what comes. And I thank you, Chris, for encouraging me to do that. But the bottom line is I don't know, but I'm excited to find out.
Well, I am too. And my dream that I see for you is going national. Forget NPR. You're going to be on every talk show. People are going to be talking about your book. You're going to influence so many people's lives with the knowledge and the insight and the tenderness that you bring to dream work. It's just thrilling to me, and I'm always going to be your biggest cheerleader.
Oh, Chris, thank you. I'm really taking that in. I really feel like a blessing is being bestowed on me. Thank you.
You're so welcome, Katherine.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Katherine, one of the things that really interests me about your show is that you're a scientist, but I think you do a great job at approaching people who have, ideas about dreams that are, to a mainstream scientist would just say, that is not science. I don't know what the hell that is. It ain't science. But you take them and you approach them with the same kind of generous, accepting attitude of a scientist who just wants to get the data from people. This is what you think about your dreams, and because you think it, and because they're your dreams, there's nobody to dispute it. So talk about treating subjects that are, objectively somewhat unscientific, but treating them with the generosity and the openness that allows you to have a kind of a scientific approach to that.
Yeah. So there's something that we get. I'm thinking of what is like the era of Darwin, when there was a lot of these gentleman scientists, where they were not necessarily associated with institutes of higher learning, but they were people who had a little time and curiosity, and they would do their own research, and a lot of those gentlemen scientists made some of the huge advances in sciences at that time. And I think dreams are perfectly ripe for that, because as you're saying, Rick, that the dreamer is the only one who knows what their particular dream is all about. Until we get
and even they don't know about it. They might not even remember it correctly, and they know that when they come in.
That's true, they do. And yet there's something unique and valuable about that dream. And maybe this is something that highlights how how special and unique each individual human being is. Because whenever I meet somebody and we start exploring their dreams, they have a unique perspective on the world. And I feel like I'm kind of peering in through a window and looking at their house and like, this is what it's like for this person. And the dreams kind of have their own language. And there's something about the uniqueness of each individual that the dreams really, really highlight. And I have such respect for that individuality that I don't even really know, as you say, what my own dreams are about. And I certainly don't know what your dreams are about. And yet together we can still find meaningful transformation occurring by exploring these dreams. One of my teachers thought of herself as that we would be going into the subconscious together and holding up the light of the dream, and that the dream would cast some light on what's going on in the subconscious. And, so who cares about subconscious? The thing about the subconscious is we could not function as human beings without it. Like 90% or maybe 95% of everything we do every day is habitual. And voila, there's the subconscious. So we have these habits and these routines and these ways of being in the world that are unconscious. They're below the level of consciousness. That includes breathing and the heart beating and all the muscles that move. That there is a huge, we really want to be partners with our subconscious. And the dreams can really show a little bit of what's going on down there, and what's going on in the cells that needs to come out, that's ready to emerge. And the dreams do highlight the things that are ready to start moving. That's my experience.
One of the things I think that's so interesting, it's out of what you were talking about. Dreams are essentially anti-stories. They do not reflect any of our normal understanding of the world, which is our understanding of the world is 100% narrative. Anything I ask you to describe about your life, you will use the story form to tell it to me. And dreams are absolutely not that. I think one of the things that's interesting about studying dreams is that they must be, it's like measuring a poisonous gas. It has to be converted before you can measure it.
Yes.
So we are transforming the dreams that we have using the narrative approach, which is essentially our linear human consciousness. So talk about that, the squiggly thing that's underneath. It's like a Lovecraftian unknowable monster that lurks within us.
It's true. And as we were joking about with Lovecraft, is he doesn't describe his monsters. He just describes the feeling people have, is like the terror that when they see the monster. He doesn't really describe what it is. And I think maybe the dreams are a little bit like that. Like they describe the feeling of what's going on in the subconscious, but they don't actually give us access to what's actually happening there. And yet we can be really enwrapped. We can really be connected with that, and it can be really helpful in a certain way. It can be helpful in terms of connecting us to our deepest feelings, and to connect to those feelings, in particular the ones that we've hidden because we had to, because it was safest, because we, in that moment it wasn't safe to bring out those things. And so the dreams address things that are hidden. And so even our very imperfect ways, we can get little hints of those, and then by following the feelings in our body, that when we look at those very imperfect dreams, and then coming back to the body, we can trace down I was going to say precisely, I don't think it's precise, but we can track down very much where the issue is, and where where the things are stuck in our body.
Where do dreams stand, and where does dream study stand in relation to the rest of science, like astrophysics, for example? We know there's equations. We might not know what those things are out there, but eventually we figure out a way to throw equations at them and describe them. Is there something analogous happening in the world of dreams?
Well, there are quite a few people around the world who do study dreams methodically and associated with academia, and that there's quite a few of those people who are associated with the IASD. It is the International Association for the Study of Dreams. So it's not just the appreciation of dreams, but the study. And so there are quite a few people who do have their livelihoods of studying dreams. And one of the interesting reports I read recently, I'm always looking at these journal reports, is one by a student of Katia Valley, where they basically, the title is Measuring Dreams. How you measure is what you get. And so this goes...
that's always the truth.
It's always the truth, but especially in dreams. Like we were talking about the whole idea of the dream report. And it really makes a huge difference about whether we're doing it in the lab or in the person's home, whether we wake the person up every time they dream or they just tell us what dreams they had in the morning, that all these things influence the way the dream it comes out. And so it's this very slippery and yet there's a very powerful truth in these dreams. And there is a lot of science around the dreams. And maybe if I had known now what I know now, however that expression goes, that I might have been one of those dream scientists. But I am very satisfied with my life now and how I work individual with people, and I would miss the personal relationships that I get with my clients and with my groupies that I find extremely valuable now.
All voyages of discovery end up being voyages of self-discovery.
Especially in the dream world. Excellent.
Now, Katherine, what's coming up in the dream world for you in terms of classes? You're working on a book. Tell us, is it fiction? Nonfiction?
No, it's nonfiction. It's about dreams. It's all my ideas about dreams. And I'm really excited about this. And as for groups, I actually am going to start up again my Monday afternoon group, which I ran for a year and a half during the pandemic, and I've been taking a break. But by mid-January, I'm going to start that up again. So you can find me at experientialdreamwork.com, or you can send me email at Katherine@ksqd.org. That's KATHERINE@ksqd.org. I'll be starting up that Monday afternoon group in probably the second week of January. So give me a call if you want to get on the email list for that. And if you want to do a free consultation, I always like to chat with my people before we commit to sessions. And so you can give me a contact, drop me a line, and we can do a consultation about a dream if you like. I want to say about next week.
Yes.
Is this a good time to say that?
Yeah.
Okay. So next week is Christmas Day. How about that? But we are going to be live at the Journal. So go ahead and tune in. We'll have on the show special guest Lucille Bosco, who explores dreams using tarot cards. So that's our special Christmas treat. Max will be back at the phones. So you might want to call in and have a chat with my now husband. And we will be open for callers, so ring in to keep us company on the studio Christmas Day next week, live at Saturday at 10 a.m., or catch the podcast replay, which, as always, will be released on the Monday following the show.
And it's about that time.
Stars fading, but I linger on, dear, still craving your kiss.
I am Katherine Bell, and this has been the Dream Journal. Thanks for listening. You can find out more about my dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. And contact me if you'd like to sign up for a free introductory dream consultation. I'd also especially like to thank my everything today, Rick Kleffel. He's a music creator, my engineer and board op, and also my interviewer. Also, I'd like to thank Tony Rosamano for answering the phones and all of the donors who support this station. We couldn't be here if you weren't here, so thanks for your donations. And if you give us a call, give us a ring at ksqd.org. Tell them that you're a Dream Journal listener. And when you wake up tomorrow morning, take a minute to look within. Do you remember a dream? Write it down and bring it to the next Dream Journal. I am Katherine Bell, and you are listening to KSQD Santa Cruz.
Rise again. Climbed aboard the dream weaver train.